This episode is going slightly off the normal beaten track because we're going to be talking about research. We're going to be talking about science, and we're going to talk about how to spot absolute horseshit claims in the nutritional world. So you've all seen various different publications, media outlets, websites, publish different articles that say this is what's making you fat, that's what's making you fat. Science is now telling us this is the answer, whether that's low fat now is the key, or whether it's carbohydrates are spiking your insulin and making you fat. The research is showing this, the research is showing that. All that serves to do seems to be confusing everybody. It confuses the fuck out of you because one study says this, one study says that, or at least that's what they claim. None of it ever seems to kind of cohesively come together and give you one definitive answer. You look through one magazine, you look through one website, and they say one thing completely contradicted the next time. But it all seems fairly fucking logical because they're all saying, well, this study, which you can link to here and you can click and you can go and read it, is saying this. Here's a quote from the dude that did the study, and he's saying that. So that seems plausible, right? There's a scientist dude with a scientific type study has told you this, therefore that must be true, right? Well, all is not as it seems, at least on face value anyway. So even though they appear to be quote unquote evidence-based and they appear to be telling you facts about scientific research, there is a level of understanding that is not being shown in its true light, I would say to you. There's some information that they're holding back from you, or at least maybe they don't even understand themselves and they're just going for this sort of attention-grabbing headline. Now, I went online and I found, didn't take me very long, but I found two very, very attention-grabbing, almost fear-mongering headlines around nutrition that basically, when you read the depth of the article and when you looked at the research, really the claim that they've made in the conclusion of the article, as well as the headline, was absolute nonsense. So here's one from Business Insider. So Business Insider is quite a big website. It's quite a big, high-profile place where people come to get lots of information. So theoretically, it's well respected. It should be a good source of information. Now, here's one headline that they had on their website, and I will read it word for word. Quote, "There's growing evidence that eating fat won't make you fat, but sugar will." Okay? Now, we'll come on to why that's horseshit in a bit. The second one came from another website, news website, was, quote, "Why an egg a day can send you to an early grave," end quote. So you can see that is quite sensationalist. That's going to make you think, fuck me. I'm eating eggs and now I'm going to go to an early grave. And then there's science referenced in this article. Shit, I should stop eating eggs. And it's interesting that literally those two articles themselves contradict. So one guy says fat won't make you fat, and this other guy is saying a fatty egg essentially is going to raise your cholesterol and put you in an early grave. So already two sensationalist headlines referencing research, and then two sensationalist headlines conflicting each other. So that is, in just two different examples, pretty much the sum total of what you're experiencing in the nutritional world. And this is why shit is confusing, right? So clearly, now there's usually two reasons why these horseshit articles come out. One is because the journalist creating the article doesn't have the nutritional knowledge to critique it themselves. Maybe they've got, someone has asked them, they're a contributor to a magazine or a publication. Someone's come to them and say, hey, I've got this cool article. Do you want to publish it? And it's kind of like ghost written for them. They haven't got the nutritional knowledge to really critique that well. And then they just publish it because it looks good. It looks like it's referenced well. So yeah, cool, get it out there. Then it's maybe to sell a few magazines. It's there to maybe get lots of hits on the website. That's why it's kind of clickbaity type of headlines. The other flip side of that is someone's trying to sell you some shit. Maybe they say, well, okay, you need to go low carb because carbs are bad. So, hey, I've got this keto diet you really should buy. So there's this ulterior motive going on. That can be another one. Or they're selling you a supplement or some sort of horseshit. Or it could be a mixture of all those different things. But in reality, a lot of these different things, a lot of these articles really are just that sensationalist type of stuff that's not based on actual fact. So what you need to look at is this. This is how you actually spot whether an article is horseshit or not. And it's quite simple. It's not that hard. Firstly, when you come to look at research, there's a hierarchy of importance. So a bit like when you try and lose weight and try and lose fat, you'll say like calories is the most important thing. Energy balance is the most important thing. And then you work your way up to say, okay, after that, I'm going to look at protein. I'm going to look at getting a minimum amount of fat. I'm going to look to optimize my sleep. I'm then going to look at timing of my nutrition around my workout. I'm then going to look at micronutrients, fiber, supplements, and all that sort of stuff, all building up into a pyramid of what's important and what's not. Then when you look at research, there's the same, because there's different types of research. All research isn't created equal, to use a little bit of a semi-nutrition type of thing. So what we have is all of these different layers of nutrition. You can think about it in the old pyramid. Everybody loves a fucking pyramid to say what's important. Now, at the bottom level of the pyramid is the stuff that's just not really that important. And at the top is the stuff that we're interested in, kind of. So how I kind of think about it is the Daily Mail, the likes of those particular sensationalist websites, publications, media publications, really focus in on the bottom two types of research. And I'll go through what those are in a second. However, a true evidence-based nutritionist or publication, whatever it may be, really focuses mainly at the top, but understands all. So they understand the depth of research, but they really focus in on what's at the top. So let's walk up from bottom to top. So first of all, in order of least important to most important, first of all, you have test tube research. So this is where you're in a lab, maybe they've got some, they're just doing some tests. I've seen a study on artificial sweeteners where they're just putting artificial sweeteners straight onto cells in a petri dish and then looking what happens. And of course, there's this really overreaction because something crazy happens to the cells on this petri dish when you just add sweetener directly to it. Now, the reason why that's not a huge thing to be sort of taking causational conclusions from is because your body is a completely different environment to just cells on a petri dish. There's so much that goes on when you consume food. There's so much things going on in your body, like stomach acid for one thing can, change things dramatically. So you can see a lot of people look at alkaline research. Okay, if you put alkaline stuff on a cancer cell or something like that, it changes it dramatically. But your body is this like brilliant thing that maintains pH balance. It has all these functions going on. So, just saying, well, if I just drink some alkaline water, that's going to make a difference. It's just not, because your body isn't a cell in a petri dish. It just doesn't work like that. So when you're talking at test tube research, that's really at the bottom. Then you might say, okay, next up from that is animal research. Animal research, again, like to use a sweetener example, lots of research on animals in terms of artificial sweeteners. But the thing with animal research is that it almost never translates to humans. So again, you might use it as directional, but you can't really use it as a causational, like, okay, we saw this reaction in a rat, therefore we will see the same reaction in a human. Now, the reason why they do sort of animal research is to test some initial hypothesis. Also, sometimes where it's unethical to test a certain thing on a human, on which some would say it's unethical to test it on an animal as well. But, that's the world we live in. So for example, you can't really put on a human on a starvation diet, but they might do that on a rat. Okay, I'm not getting into the ethics of whether that's good or bad. I'm just telling you. Okay, so then there's the animal research. Almost never translates to humans. So if you're reading through these articles and it says, oh, this was done in a test tube or this was done on rats, just ignore it. Just fucking ignore it. Move on. Just that article, as soon as you see that, it's just null and void almost. Just take it as Whatever conclusions they draw, if that's the only studies that they're using, do not even pay attention to it. Just say, fuck off. Next up, you've got opinions. Opinions of people. Now, these might be like editorials and things like that. Now, sometimes these are useful. So if you've got someone who's a genuine expert on a particular topic, maybe somebody who has researched protein all their lives and many, many different scientific studies into protein and things like that. They know protein and how it works in the body to the largest extent. Maybe they're one of the cleverest people on the planet when it comes to protein. Let's use that as an example. If they have an opinion, then that opinion could be quite valid because they've got a broad understanding of all the research, what's gone on. They've got a broad understanding, and they might draw some hypotheses, some ideas, and some ideas from what they know. So that could be useful. It might not be useful if they're a complete fucking moron, but it could be useful. Up from there, then you've got the classic. Now, this is where you see most of the things. This is observational studies. Now, observational studies are looking at basically correlations between let's call them two different events, and then seeing if there's a correlation between the two. So, for example, here's a couple of examples for you. There may be a correlation between kids leaving school at 16 and teenage pregnancy. There's a correlation between those two. So they're saying that if you leave school at 16, you're more likely to get pregnant. Now, that's a correlation. That's not causation. The act of leaving school at 16 did not make you pregnant, especially if you're a dude. Now, so you can see how, okay, they may correlate, but there's not necessarily one did not cause the other. So there's lots of other factors, lots of confounding variables that might lead someone to be pregnant when they're a teenager, not just leaving school at 16. So that's a correlation. One other correlation would be, for example, let's say we're doing some research, and research says that vegetarians are healthier, or a vegetarian diet or vegan diet is more healthy than a meat-eating diet. So red meat is bad for you, for example. Let's say they've done that. Now, that will be observational. Now, the issue there is that there's so many other confounding variables that might stay. Let's say they're looking at cancer or all-cause mortality or something like that. There's so many different confounding variables that go into that. So when you look at it, a little bit of logical thinking would say that, and again, looking into other research would say that people that eat red meat generally smoke more, they drink more, they do less exercise, they eat less vegetables. They do all of these things that effectively increase their risk of disease in various different aspects of life, not just the fact that they eat meat. You then look at the same sort of scenario for a vegan or a vegetarian. Now, if you're going to go vegan, now that instantly says that person is taking having a lot more vested interest in their health, just by the fact that moving away from a meat-eating diet and being more conscious of the foods they're eating is an investment in, they've really gone into health. They are what we would call a health-seeking individual. Now, therefore, they are less likely to smoke, less likely to drink more. They're less likely to do all of these other things that would compound together to increase their risk of various different diseases and so on and so forth. So someone will just say, observationally, a vegan diet doesn't lead to cancer like someone who eats red meat. But it doesn't necessarily mean that eating red meat gives you cancer. It's all of those confounding variables going into it. Another thing is that there's research that's gone into, let's say, what they've done is, in one particular study, is look at health-seeking individuals on both sides of the equation. So they've gone and stood outside like a health food shop or something like that, while people have gone in to eat buy all of their different sprouted vegetables, as Martin McDonald would say, grass-fed salmon and bulgur wheat, quinoa, all of these sorts of ingredients that healthy people eat. Now they've then said, okay, do you eat meat? Are you a meat eater or a vegetarian, and so on and so forth. When they look at these two sets of people, i.e. both health-seeking individuals, but one group meat eaters, one not, there's zero difference in terms of the health of those two separate groups. But when you look at it compared to a non-health seeking individual who eats meat, then you get that sort of difference. So these observational studies provide potentially some correlation, but not causation. So in some respects, they could be useful, but a lot to draw actual conclusions from them, very, very difficult. And this is where like the egg one came in. The egg one is a recent one whereby they said that, observationally, they've looked at this information and they've seen that eggs plus eating eggs is raising cholesterol and causing people to die or whatever it is. But again, all they're doing is looking at associations. And so if you see in an article, associate the words association or observational research shows X, Y, Z, they're the red flags to say, well, maybe there's a lot of other shit going on with these people's lives that are increasing their risk of these diseases, not just the fact that they're eating eggs. So that's the thing to remember there. Next up, you've got randomized control trials. And this is where evidence-based practitioners of any worth really start to focus in on. These are the ones that actual, really, really well thought out studies in most cases, looking at various different things and testing for them in a good way. Not all of them are going to be brilliant, but this is where you're going to place most of your attention, And above that, you've got a meta-analysis, which is basically taking randomized controlled trials, multiple ones, and then aggregating them up into one particular study. So if you see words like meta-analysis or randomized control trials, they're the ones where you'll potentially be able to draw some conclusions from. And the other thing to remember is that one study on its own doesn't prove very much. What you have to do is look at the whole body of evidence on that particular subject, and is that drawing a conclusion? Because even in a randomized control trial, you can get a spurious study that just through random chance threw out maybe an outlying result. But when you look at the body of research, what is it telling us? That's where you draw your conclusions. So the body of evidence, let's look at I keep saying body of evidence and thinking about that Madonna sort of semi-porno movie. Not sure if you've seen it. But anyway, so the growing evidence that eating fat won't make you fat, but sugar will. Okay, they're looking at observational research. So, okay, it's one step down. If you looked at all of the randomized control trials and meta-analysis that are done on that subject, we know it makes fuck all difference. So therefore, would not pay any attention to that article or anything going on in there. And again, like the cholesterol, the egg thing, throw that one out as well. So my main thing to you is really look at, when they say research, look at what? Is it test tube? Is it animal? Is it observational, associational, that type of stuff? If it's that type of stuff that they really focus in on, you could probably just discount it. If they're talking about meta-analysis, if they're talking about randomized control trials, then maybe, yes, you can take a lot of credence from that, but also look at what does the mass of evidence or information that you're absorbing tell you. Who are the 4 or 5 people in the fitness world that you trust that always say the same things and they always align with each other? So that would be my preference to you, is to say, look, whether that's me or whether that's somebody else in the fitness world, who are the 4 or 5 people that you really trust that say, look, this dude or this girl or this lady, whatever, puts out consistent information that's right. And they correlate their information is exactly the same as these other 4 people as well. So these 5 people really always say the same things. They agree on the same things. It's always evidence-based. They've got a good name in the industry. That's the people that you should be going to. They're the people you should be asking questions. You should not look at what the Daily Mail says. You should not look at what Business Insider says, because they maybe have this ulterior motive that they just want you to click on their website. They just don't really care what they've written. They just want you to click on their website and view what they've said and maybe look at all of their ads, because that's what they're getting paid for. So really think about who you look for advice from. And one of the best things that I do is I just switch off everybody else. I look at a set number of people and say, these are the guys that I follow for training information, training advice. If I want to know something about training, these are the group of people that I go to. If I want to find out something about nutrition, these are the group of people I go to. And I just blank out everything else because I trust that these people will know what they're talking about. And that's what you need to do really, is really fine tune down who you take information from, because, you know, you will tie yourself up in knots if you are consistently going around the houses, reading articles from spurious people and kind of not very well respected sources. You will tie yourself up in knots and you will never make progress. So that's where I'm kind of making my plea to you right now, is if you see these sensationalist headlines, look at what's contained in it. Look at when they say research, look at what type of research. Understand what's good, what's bad, and what's kind of in the middle. And then also look at what are people who you respect saying about that particular topic. Then trust them to give you the information that you need. Ask a bunch of questions, as many as you like, because most of the time, if they're good people and honest people, they'll be happy to answer your questions because they want good information to get out there. So cool. So if you've enjoyed this episode, as usual, come and let me know on Instagram. My user ID is at iron_paradise_fitness. And I also want you to make the best start possible to your journey to a leaner, healthier life. And to do that, what you can do is download my free 4-week training program, plus nutrition guide on how to calculate your calories, a guide on how to deal with cravings, how to live leaner at work, recipe packs, and more by just clicking the link that I've put into the notes as well. Hopefully that will help you get started on kind of cutting through all of this bullshit and start to actually make some progress. So if you want that, it's absolutely free. Just hit that link and go get it. But until the next time, all I'll say is keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next one.